Welcome to episode 42 of The Voices of Boyle, and this week I'm joined by Danny Tiernan. Danny spent his childhood playing football on the streets of Boyle, enjoying the simple pleasures of climbing trees and sliding down hills. He fondly remembers the days when cars were a rare sight on the streets, and it's these memories of a simpler time that has shaped his outlook on life. In this episode, we do a deep dive into Danny's life, exploring his family history, military journey, and memories of growing up in the town. He chats about his grandfather's service in the Connaught Rangers and the significance of the poppy symbol, among other topics. From reminiscing about Boyle's vibrant characters such as Noel Conroy to talking about his military service, it's an episode that a lot of you are looking forward to listening to. As always, thanks for taking the time to listen to these episodes. We've lots more guests recorded and even more in the pipeline. Danny, you're very, very welcome to the Voices of Boyle. Thanks very much for coming along.
You're welcome, Carlos, and thanks for coming out to have a chat.
No problem at all. Well, listen, we're going to cover a number of topics, namely the military, Connaught Rangers, FCA, bit of history of Boyle and whatnot. But before we get into that, Danny, maybe give us a kind of a glimpse of what it was like growing up in Boyle back in the old days.
Oh, back in the old days, very few cars in the town, playing football on the street, running in and out of Charlie McCormick's big tree, hiding in the tree. In the winter, then we had the slides from the top of the hill down to the bottom, down to our own house or Daly's next door. And plenty of snow, like it's not like the weather we're getting now, you know. Yes, it's completely different. I remember we played football on the street one day for about an hour and a half before a car came along, and I think it was the late Andrew Hopkins going out home. I think he had was it a Hillman or a Wolsey or something like that? Yeah,
Wasn't too many cars anyway.
no,
back then.
very few cars. Yeah,
And
we had great fun. Handball. We'd go up to the CIE stores, and we'd play handball up there. You know, again the door. And you were sound until Malachy Burton arrived. Poor Malachy didn't like us playing handball.
He ran you.
Yeah, for Malachy, the Lord of mercy on him, sound man he was too, you know. But it was his job. He was doing his job, you know. He had to keep us out in case an accident or some of us ran across in front of a train after a ball or something, you know. But yeah, that life was very, very good. Life
and simple.
Great. And simple, yeah. Yeah, meeting Santi off the train above at the station, running down behind him, and he'd be on the trailer behind the car going down to what was Taylor's Stores, which is now Surprises, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that would have been in the 60s.
Yeah, 56, late 50s, early 60s. Okay. Yeah.
And so then, growing up, Danny, for work as a young fella, would you have been doing the kind of odd jobs here or there, helping?
Oh, yeah. And as a matter of you're just recollecting a memory I have of going into Tarpeys one night to give a gentleman a lift home, and Master Kennedy was there, and we were reflecting on going to school. He was the principal in the boys' school, St. Joseph's, over where Carty's Garage is now. And he said to me, God, he said, if I did today what I did back when you were small, he said, you know, I'd be arrested. And I said, well, more than likely. I said, yeah, because times have changed. So what he used to do in the summertime, he'd or maybe spring into summer, he'd gather maybe 10, 12, 15, 20 of us into one of McKenna's minibuses, and he'd drive us out to his brother-in-law's farm, Lochgarra Farms, owned by then Major General Costello, retired, and he was also chairman of the sugar company. And we'd be tin and beat for 10 shillings on a Saturday, you know. 10 shillings was a lot back in the 60s to a young lad growing up, you know. And I got then to work on the farm during the summer for a while on holidays from school, you know, tin and beat, picking potatoes in the autumn, silage, bringing in the silage and milking the cows, you know. It was a great life. It was a lovely life, you know.
Yeah. And the Royal Hotel obviously was a big...
Oh, yeah, the Royal Hotel, I don't think there's a person in the town that wasn't employed by Vincent and Angela Regan when they owned the Royal Hotel, you know.
Yeah, now I know you worked in there.
Yeah.
What's kind of, was that in the 80s, 70s?
Well, let's see now. It would have been in the 80s. Yeah, it would have been in the 80s, yeah.
Okay. And what kind of, because I remember I met yourself and Joe O'Donnell a couple of years back in a coffee shop in Boyle, and you were telling me some stories which I can't remember, but I do always remember thinking, geez, you know, it must have been some crack back in those days. A way simpler pub scene than we have today.
Oh, yeah, it was, you had the characters, you know, the characters that come in, you know, some of them you didn't want to see them coming in, they'd be in Paddy dailies till Paddy put them out as Paddy closed at 11 every night, and the next thing, you might have nobody, you know, getting ready to close, and the next thing they'd arrive and you'd be there till 1 o'clock in the morning nursing them, you know. But, you know, work was good, work was fun in the Royal, you know. There was never any hassle with Vincent or Angela, you know, once you did your work, you know, and you know, you were never running looking for your money or anything, you know, their money was there on the Friday.
They looked after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you were dead sound, and, you know, you got, you know, I'd often come from work in Sligo, Vincent might ring and say, look, I need a barman tonight. I come up from work in Sligo and I'd go in at 6 and I'd have my dinner and be ready there for me, you know, it was a great life. But up in the discos were the ones, the discos were the upstairs in the Lockheed round.
The floor would be hopping.
Heaving.
Yeah. I heard stories about that.
Yeah, heaving. Yeah, it'd be packed, you know.
And you wouldn't go from one week to another, though, without a communion, a confirmation, a funeral,
there was
a wedding.
A wedding.
Always something on there.
It was a great place for a wedding. People didn't realise that. You know, it was close. It was right in the middle of the town, and you had great weddings in it. You know, you had big weddings, as we say. When I say big weddings, I mean big sit-down meals. And then you had the what would I call it? You know, where you went help yourself, cold meat salads, that type of, you know, small little weddings for people that weren't into the big fancy do's. You know.
How can you remember how many maybe bedrooms they had back then in the hotel?
God, I think.
Because I think there was around
30. I think,
was there that many?
I think there was, yeah.
Because I know when...
I know there was upstairs and downstairs, you see. The rooms upstairs, the rooms downstairs.
Because wasn't there only, I think, was it, I don't know, 6 or 12, kind of when the Royal closes doors as a hotel?
Yeah.
I think there was only
16, I think.
Was it 16? Okay.
Like that,
We were talking beforehand and you were mentioning like some characters in Boyle over the years. Who would have been kind of standout characters for you in town?
Oh, can you name them without being legally hung up? No. Jimser was a great character, you know. He always had a story. Jim Mahan. He was a great character. And the late Noel Conroy, you know.
Yes,
Noel
he comes up a lot.
Noel was a humdinger.
He was. Yeah.
I remember being up in Emmets one day and one evening, and in poor old Sean Kenny, the Lord of Mercy and Sean, another great character. He came in and he wasn't really very well at the time, but we didn't know that, you know. And he had a coat on him and a scarf on him and a hat, and he said, God, it's very cold out there, you know. Make me a hot one to Jerry. And the next thing, Nolly comes in, the shirt open. What's it like, says Emmett, or something like that to Noel. It's not too bad, it's a great night out there. You know? And the two of them were looking at one another, and Emmett said, look, you go outside and make up your mind what the weather is like.
Like one extreme to the other.
Yeah. But of course, the Lord of Mercy and Sean, he wasn't well at the time, and I didn't know it anyway at the time, you know. But, you know, he had funny incidents like that, you know.
Yeah, and Sir Noel was a great man.
Noel was a great man.
Yeah. Great character of town. Moving then on, Danny, you were involved up until, I think you retired in 2010 from the military. Was that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Right, 2010.
Yeah.
So maybe bring us back to the kind of the early days. Like, what inspired you, or why did you get involved with the military? What was the kind of impetus to get involved?
Well, I suppose you could say in a way we came from a big military family. Like, Grandad was in the Boer War and Great War, and Dad was in the army here, and he was one of the heroes of Jadaville, that famous battle out in the Congo, the UN in 1961. And the military kind of, I suppose, it ran in the veins. So when in 1969 I joined the FCA. And that particular year, then, there was no camp in Finner because of the troubles in the north, you know. And then in 1970, we got, instead of getting 2 weeks, we got 3 weeks to make up for the previous year, you know, kind of back pay.
Yeah.
Which you worked for. But it was good. It was good. I tell you what, it gave you great self-confidence. You know, like they taught you things that you didn't realise until later on in life, like, you know, when you went in as a private, you learned how to hold yourself, you know, stand properly, and that they told you about what we do now is if you're going on a course, you know, you're doing weights and lifting, and health and safety, lifting different things, how to lift properly. They taught you all that, but you didn't realise you were learning it, you know.
And
but
discipline
they were teaching
as
you,
well.
and how to give you discipline, yeah, and they taught you how to present something. You know, and especially if you went on an NCO's course, they taught you how to address other people, how to speak to them, and how to teach them in a way, or pass on the skills that you had learned in your career up to that date onto.
So almost kind of like communication skills as well.
Oh yes, yeah, very much so, very much so,
very important. Yeah. It's a dying kind of skill as well in the age of all the technology we have. Yeah. You joined in 1969.
Yeah,
in the FCA.
Yeah.
Now, what? Because my military knowledge is zero, but from what I understand, the FCA was a reserve army.
Yes,
right.
They were a reserve, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, and third line reserve,
right. And what was the kind of role of the FCA in the broader scheme of things?
And they were there to back up the PDF, the regular army, in the event of something happening or something going wrong. Now, during the Troubles, a lot of FCA were taken into the Finner camp was a training camp at that time, the 28th Battalion. The regular battalion weren't there at the time. And they didn't come there till 1974? Yeah, they're just after celebrating their 50th anniversary, so let's go back. Yeah, that'd be 74. So they came in 73.
Okay.
They came, yeah. And prior to that, the FCA were called in to run Finner, you know, because of the Troubles and what was going on in the north. And the security on the two power stations outside Ballyshannon, you had Kathleen Falls, which is the big one. If you're going up to Letterkenny, you'll see it on your right-hand side as you cross over the bridge there. And the other one then is further on up. It's practically on the border with Northern Ireland. It's called Cliff Falls.
Right.
So the FCA did security there. They also did security in Arigna and Trustmore, the RT mast and at top of Trustmore there, you know.
Right.
Just sent there to make sure that nothing happened, you know. You were there as a visible deterrent, I suppose, in a way, you know.
And so what was your role, or were you a commandant or?
No, I ended up a commandant. I first of all, I did my privates course.
Okay.
Then in 1971, I did my NCO's course. And then in 1977, August, the year that Elvis died while we were on the course, and he let us down badly by dying, and we were on our course. But anyway, we were in Athlone at the time, yeah. And then in 1988, I had to resign from the FCA, and I got commissioned. You resign today, and tomorrow you get commissioned. If you're going out for commission, you get commissioned into the Reserve of Officers.
Right.
So, and I came in as a second lieutenant, and then in 2010, I retired, having reached the rank of commandant. A commandant has to retire at 57. The same rules apply to the regular PDF as apply to us. So at the age of 57, I had to retire, so that was 2010.
Okay. And what would have been your your primary kind of responsibilities in that role, or what was involved?
Well, you had to look after the training needs of your whatever unit you were in charge of. I was in charge of C Company for a while before I retired, and I was responsible for looking after their training, looking if they were going anywhere, looking after get paperwork ready for camp, making sure that everything was dotted, taking them to the range for their annual range practice, taking them to the range if they were taking part in firing competitions, rifle competitions, shooting competitions, whatever, orienteering competitions, all the different competitions that were involved in that we took part in, you know, the Gust left, the BAP, the rifle. We actually won, you know, the second year after I was commissioned. I was captain of the rifle team, and we won the Western Brigade. We were the first unit from Boyle to actually win the overall Western Brigade championship. Prior to us, they had been runners up a couple of times, but they had never won it, you know.
Yeah.
And it was all the usual local lads. You had young Nevin, and Seamus Flynn was our CO, John Ward, myself, Meehan. Oh, Marty Higgins. Marty was on the rifle team as well, and Colin Gallagher and Young and Nevin. I'm sorry calling them young because I can't remember the first names now at this stage.
That's
not them all, but yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I remember we were John Burke, who was originally from Carrick, was our CO, the PDF CO, and we were after winning, and John wasn't too long out with the 19th as the CO, and he was so delighted. Like we had won 4 trophies, I think it was that day, and we had won the overall trophy. So we were on our way back, and Brother William was the regular PDF corporal here at the time, and Joe Rooney was driving the wagon, and we were coming back, and he says to William, where are my team meeting? And William said, oh, we're booked into a place in Tuam. What kind of a place is that? Said John Burke. And he said, well, it's kind of a, like a chip shop or whatever, but they sit down, You're not taking my winning team to a chip shop, he says. Get onto the hotel straight away and book us in. So he booked us into the hotel in Tuam, gave us a great meal, gave us a drink and all, and put his own hand in his pocket, and paid for a drink for us, And then he says to William, when you get these boys to Boyle, he says, bring them into the Royal and get them their tea. He says, I'm sure they're going to be hungry again. So into the Royal again, and again he put his hand in his pocket and he put 2 rounds of drink up for us, Now we weren't all drinking alcohol, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I thought it was nice.
It was the principle,
yeah, but I thought it was very funny in the wagon when he said, you're not bringing my winning team to a chip shop. And I remember Willie saying, and what will Quartermaster Feely say? Doesn't matter what Quartermaster Feely says, he'll do what I tell him. But we'd there were funny things like that were done that, things you can't remember. I tell you another funny one that happened above in Dunree. The Lord of Mercy and Jerry Murta. Jerry was regularly the Sergeant Major on camp, and we had Eamon Coakley was the captain with us at the time. And we were down at the back. There was a Gustav range at the back, facing out onto the sea, the North Atlantic, And we had been fired in there, and Eamon Coakley, Captain Coakley as he was then, came down. And he used to have, on a warm day, he'd have his jumper tied around his waist, and most people did anyway those times, And, of course, being on the coast, you have the seagulls. So one of the seagulls decided to plunk. Where did it land? Captain Coakley's, Eamon Coakley's collar at. And Jerry looked up and he didn't call them seagulls in the sky. And it was they couldn't script it, It was so funny. It was very, very funny. You get little things like that break like the monotony.
Of course,
that change
take
everything.
The seriousness out of things.
Yeah.
And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during your time there, and maybe in a leadership role, or were there any?
Yeah, there wasn't an awful lot, because normally we got what we looked for, but it was to try and keep the group together, try and get them to train together, and because it was voluntary, we might get you this week, but we might be able to get you next week because you're away or in college or whatever, But trying to keep the camaraderie there and keep the training there, and like a football team. Everybody knew what the other guy was going to do and how he was going to do it, and that was a bit of a challenge, trying to organise something where everybody could attend.
Yes, and get involved.
Yeah.
And would you say your perspective, Danny, on the role of the military has changed over the years, or has it remained the same?
No, it has changed over the years. Like the FCA is gone now.
It's gone?
It's gone, yeah.
Right.
They're now a reserve, and they're now integrated with the PDF. Now, they were integrated with the PDF before, but of course it wasn't as intense as it is now, So they're doing, I would have done orderly officer in Longford and Finner, and you get called in maybe 2 weekends a month or whatever, apart from your regular FCA duties or whatever, you get called in. And I know it now that I was talking to one of the lads in Finner there on last Tuesday, and he just said to me, the reserve now are doing as much and as many duties as the regulars are, Once upon a time, it was mainly the regulars that did, we'd say, guard duties, and that the soldiers, the rank of sergeant down. But now it's the PDF or the RDF, Reserve Defence Forces, are now doing the exact same. They're totally integrated now, or almost totally integrated with the PDF, you know.
And what advice would you give, or what would you say to a young individual that was aspiring to pursue a career in the military side of things? Would you have any wise words? Or
it's not an easy life, right? It's a tough life. Because remember, you could go on duty on a Monday morning, on a Friday morning. It would normally be the time duties would change. You could go on duty and you'd be in barracks for a week, you know, and you mightn't get out. You won't get out to see your family, you know. You'll be there 24/7 from Friday to Friday. And you go on duty at, we'd say, 8 o'clock on a Friday morning. You won't come off duty 8 o'clock the following Friday morning, because you might be gone out on a patrol, you might be gone on something, you know, at 7 o'clock that Friday morning, so you won't actually finish till you come back in, you know. And I think that's one of the crux of the things with the army. Like, they're not fairly treated as a civilian group is treated. Like, for example, you know, during the Troubles, you had guards on border duty, and you had the army behind them, backing them up. But the guard might be on overtime, 8 hours overtime. The soldier was still on his day's pay, you know.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting anything extra for it, even though he was out there for 24 hours, you know.
Yeah. So it's changing that.
That factor, as far as I know, hasn't changed. I think a soldier might get an allowance now or something, an extra allowance, but, you know, it still doesn't compensate you for. And that their pay was let slip. You know, there were pay parity with the guards at one time. Now there's Now there's an awful difference.
Big difference, right?
Big difference now. Like, there's not a young fella going in joining up today. He's not. There's nothing there to entice him, like money-wise or whatever, you know.
It has to be either passion or passed down, maybe, that kind of.
Yeah, it has to be a passion, yeah.
Which, and then again, there's no incentive then for potentially new blood to come in that way, unless you're passionate about the military, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think the fact that they still go overseas, we'll say, to the Lebanon and places like that, that they do, you still take on a role with the UN, is kind of an incentive, you know. They say, join the Navy and see the world, you know. Now, you join the army, you see part of the world, you won't see it all. But it is kind of, some people, you know, say, oh yeah, it was nice. But a lot of young lads leave, you know, after their first
to get disillusioned.
Yeah, they do, yeah. And it's the fact that, you know, there is no Minister for Defence, you know. It's a half a portfolio now that's held by the Taoiseach.
It doesn't have.
Once upon a time there was a Minister for Defence where you could go.
Yeah.
Whereas the junior minister now, he has no seat at the cabinet that is responsible for defence. He has no seat at the cabinet, and, you know, they have no way of getting their grievances aired properly. I suppose, or get the ear of the minister, you know, or get the ear of the cabinet, you know.
So let's go further back. Let's go back to because I know this is there's a lot of history in the Connaught Rangers with your family. So for those of us, myself included, Danny, that wouldn't have too much of a knowledge about the Connaught Rangers and the significance of the Connaught Rangers to a garrison town like Boyle back in the day, could you give us like a brief, what were the Connaught Rangers, why were they set up, and when?
They were set up in 1793. England was at war with France. Its army had decreased over the years, and it was at its lowest ebb when they went to war with France. So in 1793, the Burke was from Galway. He was what would we call the Lord Lieutenant or whatever at Connaught, and he was tasked with getting a regiment together. So he got the men from Connaught to enlist. Now, you must remember, most of these guys would have come from landlorded estates and that, you know. And there was very little employment for anyone, so it was seen as an income or a job, you know. So they joined up. They weren't. You wouldn't be as knowledgeable then about the world affairs as we'd say we are today. We have the television, we have internet, you know. And he got the army together, as I said, in 1793, and my grandfather now, for example, joined in Paisley in Scotland. He was from Sligo. He was from around John Street in Sligo, and he got on a cattle boat and paid his way on the cattle boat as a stoker across to Scotland, and went to Hamilton in Scotland, and there he joined the Connaught Rangers. They were based there at the time. And from that, he went in 1900, he went to the Boer War and came back from the Boer War, and the battalions then did what they called Commonwealth duties. In other words, like they were in India, you know, and they'd be in Africa, places like that, but the Rangers were mostly in India. So he would have done Commonwealth duties in India. And they had just gone out to India in 1914 when the war started. And the 2nd Battalion Connaught Rangers had just come back from India. They would swap over, you see, and they would come back to Galway, Boyle, Castlebar, you know, the different barracks. And Athlone, of course. And the 1st Battalion were kind of on leave, for want of a better word, you know. They were getting their holidays that they were due. And the war started and they were called up. And by the time they made their way down to Dover to go to France, the 2nd Battalion had been practically wiped out at Mons, the retreat from Mons. They were the rear guard at Mons while the other regiments pulled back. They were one of the rear guards that were holding off the Germans to give them time to get back and set up a defensive position again. So I don't want to go into too deep, because we could talk about on hours about, you know, where they were and where they weren't and what river they were at and where they set up their defensive positions. But basically they were practically wiped out, and what was left of them, and I think, now I'm just taking off my head, I think it was about 36 of them left, and they were seconded then into the 1st Battalion, the Connaught Rangers. But then you had the reserves, the 3rd, the 4th Battalion, and they were stationed, they were based here, the 4th here, 3rd in Galway, and they were called up to supply troops to the regiments that were in battle, you know, to replace those that were killed, basically. That was it. But then Kitchener came along and he wanted more armies. So they got 2 more regiments. They got the 5th and 6th Battalions, Connaught Rangers, and they're called the New Army or Kitchener's Army, whatever way you want to call them. And they served until the end of the war. Now, the 6th Battalion were wiped out again at the end of the war, and the 5th Battalion were brought back to Dover, and at the end of the war, and they were told, ground arms. And when they grounded their arms, they were told, the 2nd Battalion Connaught Rangers, pick up your arms. And they just grounded them, went down and picked them up again, and they were now the 2nd Battalion Connaught Rangers to replace the 2nd Battalion that was killed earlier on in the war. Now, that's a simple,
a simple overview. Yeah, of course, yeah.
And they were all from Connaught. A lot of them were from around the coastal areas or the towns, you know, because there was no employment in the towns. There was no social welfare, you know. You dug out your own living, yeah. And anyone that time, like I said, when the soldier got married, the wife could go with him, you know, they could go to India while they were there for the 2 years. Like my aunt and uncle were born in India, out in Pune. They were stationed in Pune. Granddad was stationed in Pune, and they were born while he was out there. So, you know, the family could go with you for the 2 years, you know, but they had to come back when you came back, you know.
Yeah.
But then when the war started, all the families were brought back, and all that was left there was the soldiers. And of course, as I said, the soldiers went to war, and the family stayed in Ireland. But there was no Irish regiment then kept in Ireland. You know, the Connaught Rangers would have come back to Boyle or Galway or whatever, you know, prior to 1914. After 1914, they never came back. They were never allowed to serve in their own country again. None of the Irish regiments, you know. And that was all because of the 1916 rising. What happened then, they were afraid to send Irishmen back because of what had happened and the slaughter that went on, execution of the leaders of the 1916 rising. You know, they were afraid that there might be influence to change over or whatever. No, That's a theory. I don't know if it's a fact or not, but I think I read somewhere that it had an influence on the decision not to send them back to Ireland again after 1914. Right. Let them serve there, But they went on until 1922. They served and they were disbanded in 1922. I can't remember the name of the minister's act, the minister, but they were decreasing the number of soldiers in the army, and it was simple enough to get rid of the Irish regiments because the Free State was formed, in 22, yeah. But it didn't really have anything to do with the Free State. It wasn't because of the Free State that they were taken out, that they were gone, because the decision to decrease the army had started in 1920, which was 2 years before the government were working on this theory of reducing the army and getting rid of different regiments, and it kind of just suited then to get rid of the Irish regiments, but they held on to the Ulster, the Enniskillens, the Dragoons, the Royal Irish, the North Irish Horse, and they got rid of the Leinsters, the Munsters, the Connaughts, and the Dublin Fusiliers, of course, yeah, and the South Irish Horse. They were all got rid of. And
where would the allegiance of the soldiers? Where would it have been to? Would it have been to the regiment of the Connaught Rangers, or was it to the Crown?
No, it I suppose from the officer corps it'd be to the Crown, but to the men it would be to the regiment.
Right.
I remember having a conversation with my grandfather, and we were discussing. I had met a few of the men that were involved in the mutiny at the time, and I was only a young lad. Didn't fully understand what was going on or had no concept of what had happened. And I remember talking to my grandfather about it, trying to get him to talk about it. And I remember, the way somebody, if they don't want to talk to you, they'll kind of cut you off, to cut down the conversation. I can still see him sitting in the armchair with the cat on his shoulders, and he looking at the horses, and he said, "Look, they were only blackguards. They weren't part of the family." And that kind of stitched it all together for me in later years, because when I looked at a lot of them that were there hadn't served in the First World War with the regiment. They had been seconded in, or they had left and then rejoined the Connaughts, and that's what he said. That's where that was coming from, They weren't part of the family. They weren't part of the military family, the Connaughts,
So that your grandfather was William Tiernan.
William, yeah.
And
90244.
Yeah. And so he served obviously...
7017 was Grandad, yeah. 90244 was my father, yeah.
And so he served obviously in the Connaught Rangers. Mm-hmm. Like, what personal stories or anecdotes, experiences can you share that he would have maybe told you from back in his day?
He a lot of them, or I suppose I could say 90% of them probably never told the true story of, what went on during the war. And Grandad didn't tell me exactly what happened or what he did. He never said to me, well, I shot a man or I killed a man, whatever. But he did tell me a few stories. He told me about a march that they were crossing a desert, and I think it was Iraq. And that they were crossing the desert and they were going to come up, cut across South Russia and march into Germany and come in behind the Germans. That was the theory, but it didn't work out that way because the war ended before they got there. But he said they were using a railway line that had been built. And I remember reading about the railway line actually in the history. I can't remember where it was exactly, but there was a pole, a telegraph pole. And he said some fella climbed up the pole to have a look to see what was ahead, and he was like, "Get down out of there, or you lose your head." You could get shot.
Sure.
You get the head blown yourself. And he told me that they were starving, they were thirsty, they were knackered really when they reached when the war ended, when they reached their destination or where they were told to stop. He also told me that he was involved, and his army record shows it as well. He was in a trench when the Germans attacked, and the German, I don't know whether he was shot at the top of the trench or whatever, but when he fell, his bayonet went through Grandad's shoulder and pinned Grandad to the back of the trench. And they had to pull your man off him and take the rifle out. He ended up in Alexandria, I think it was, in hospital for treatment. He also had shrapnel in his hip I don't know which happened first, the bayonet or I think the shrapnel actually happened first. And he ended up in hospital. But that's all he told me. He wouldn't tell me about, the war itself or the fight.
As you said, he'd cut you off maybe.
Oh yeah, you were gone, yeah. What do you want to know that for,
Yeah.
What do you want to know that for? It's no, that's gone. That's dead. That's gone. Leave it alone.
So back in those days as well, a controversial topic, still is obviously, would be the symbol of the poppy flower.
Yeah.
So what would your view of the poppy be, and what does it represent to you?
To me, well, Grandad and a lot of the ex-British soldiers always sold the poppy, and I think they sold it up to about 1962 or 1963.
They sold it?
Yeah, it was sold here in town, yeah. And Grandad would always wear the poppy, and he had one reason for wearing the poppy, and that was to celebrate or remember his comrades that fought and died with him, the people he knew from around the town and that, you know. And he used the poppy, he wore the poppy in that sense. But there's two aspects to the poppy. First of all, it's not a British symbol.
Okay. Right.
It's French.
It's French. It's French. The poppy fields of France.
Yeah. The women of France used to make the poppy and sell them to the soldiers. It was founded by two French ladies at the end of the war to commemorate the dead of the First World War. It wasn't taken on by the British until years later,
Okay.
And then it became a British symbol. It's technically a stolen symbol from the French, yeah. And I look on the poppy, when I see the poppy, I remember my grandfather, and I remember the way he talked about his comrades that were killed, and why he remembered them, And I don't have that, I suppose, I don't use the word bitterness, but I don't have that anger in me to run down the poppy and say it's this, that and the other. I know it's not a British symbol.
Yeah.
And to me, that's good enough for me.
For me, I suppose, again, I wouldn't have known too much about the military, but I was always led to believe that the poppy was a symbol of maybe British imperialism. That's what I was kind of...
No, that's way out. That's way wrong. No, it was never a symbol. They might have captured it and portrayed it in that way.
Yeah.
I know down the north during the Troubles they portrayed it as theirs. It was their poppy,
Yeah.
But I remember meeting some British people in France, and one girl asked me why Cuisa Barabas was our motto. And I said, well, it's the motto of all Irish regiments in the British Army, always was and always will be, unless somebody changes it between now and then. And she said, no, that only belongs to the people of Ulster. And I said, no, you're wrong. You have to go back and look at your history again, because it was there long before Ulster was born, before Ulster came into existence, before Ulster got its own government.
Yeah.
And it is still it's the motto of the Irish Guards,
Yeah.
And or any other of the Irish regiments.
Yeah.
The Royal Irish, and I know they're Northern Ireland, but the Royal Irish, their motto is Cuisa Barabas as well, who will separate us or who will divide us.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
I think I remember hearing or reading somewhere that the reason why the poppy you mentioned was sold was because it was the only thing that grew in fields. Would that be correct? After they were bombed?
Yeah, the poppies grew in the fields after the bombing,
Right.
It was the only thing that grew,
So that would make sense then. That could make a few quid from it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay,
it's the made silk poppies. I think they were made out of silk. Now they're made out of paper,
So I suppose people maybe today that choose to wear a poppy would be, as you mentioned, maybe as a way of remembering their fallen comrades, as opposed to a symbol of British rule.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense.
But the Royal British Legion that sell the poppy, and there is an Irish branch of the Royal British Legion, the money stays here, and it goes towards helping ex-British soldiers living in Ireland, or ex-Irishmen that were in the British Army, and if they're in trouble, it helps them. It's buried quite a few. It's put headstones over quite a few. It's done up houses for quite a few.
Yeah.
And it's helped them, in times of trouble and struggle. They can always apply to the RBL, and I'm not going to say they will be given something, but the chances are they will.
Yeah. So continuing the family tradition in the military, is that something that's continuing down line for you?
That carried on until November this year.
Okay.
Grandad joined in 1897.
Yeah.
He joined up, and we've had somebody in the military without a break until I think it was the end of November this year, when David retired.
Oh, from the helicopter.
David was in the Air Corps.
The Air Corps, that's Christ.
In the
Republic,
that's right. He's the last of the Tiernans to come out. So Grandad was the first to go in. And
so 130 years.
But on the British side now, my cousins, I have cousins still in the British Army,
So that was 130 years, maybe consecutively.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's still going on the other side of the family. So,
sure.
William Tiernan still has descendants that are still in the military.
What efforts are being made to, especially for, I suppose, Boyle being a focal point of the Connaught Rangers, we have the museum in King House.
The museum is in King House,
the display, the Connaught Rangers display. So you played an integral part of that.
Myself and Neil Armstrong started that in 2002.
Yeah.
The 80th anniversary of the disbandment of the regiment. I remember he came to me. In 1999, we set it up.
Okay.
2002, the Connaught Rangers Association was founded, but the museum was founded in 1999. I remember Tommy Egan asked me would I meet him, and I met him above in Matt Smith's. And we sat down and we talked, and I told him, I'll give you the stuff if you put it in and look after it for me. Yeah, so brilliant. And I don't know many people remember Neil Armstrong here in town. Yeah.
No,
but he was very dedicated to King House. He was the curator of King House.
Okay.
Yes, at the time. So
was there many hurdles, Danny, in getting that set up? In getting a display for the Connaught Rangers set up in King House?
It was very hard to get a case to put stuff into. They wanted to leave it out on tables but I wasn't having any of that. They had to have and they got a small little glass cabinet
for protection.
Just for protection. Yeah. Well, the more you handle stuff like that, the more damage is going to become.
Sure.
But you were on about the Connaught Rangers and their influence in the town. And I always said to people, well, when the Connaught Rangers were in existence and they were here in the town, they were like a small factory of 300 people. Do you imagine the income that was coming in every week to 300?
And spent locally.
They had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
They had nowhere else to spend it. It had to be spent locally.
Yeah.
Miss Judge used to buy their cigarettes off Miss Judge, which is, it's somewhere there around, I say, what used to be Bernie Flaherty's. Grahan's, or the other side of Sheridan's, because Maureen O'Sullivan was born in Sheridan's house, as you know, and her father was Captain O'Sullivan, and they were related again to the Frasers from Balnafad and from Knockvicker, so
and wasn't there...
it was a big kind of, like you imagine today any town that's losing 300 people,
huge,
300 workers or an income from 300 people, it's a lot to lose,
big. And so wasn't there talk then a couple of years ago, Danny, of, or maybe it was a rumour, but there was talk of the Connaught Rangers display moving over to Galway. Was a rumour?
I wasn't with the association at that time.
Right. Was that a legitimate rumour, or was it just?
I have a feeling it was something that was going to happen, but when they realised that there was going to be a kick up, they stopped, because some stuff had been taken out of King House and was moved out of King House at the time. So
I think it would be it would be crazy to think it would be moved, because why not? And also then there is the famous escape of James Malloy.
Yeah, escape from the barracks.
And there was a great video done by Anna Robertson and Callum, her son, that they created this with a couple of the lads from town.
Yeah.
And that's a great little...
Brendan Reid was
Mead Larkin, yeah. Brilliant little story to be told, because, again, not many people know about that.
Yeah, well, the story that I heard from the Mead Larkin family was that... I mentioned Mrs. Judge in the shop, right?
Yep.
And was it the late Paddy Leonard's father or brother, or Paddy himself, was a kind of a messenger boy to be running in and out, an altar boy, to be running in and out, going into the King House for service or whatever. But he used to carry messages in and out to Miss Judge, and she used to pass them on to the boys down the street, and they had a lookout over O'Leary's and over where Sloane's is now, over those how they could go up the green, you see, come round the back, and they could overlook onto the barrack gate and see what was going on, right. You know. But anyway, Matt Malloy's father was in jail, and they wanted to break him out. So they came up with a plan. So the plan was that they had to break the cell door, the lock on the cell door, or get the keys for the cell door. And Mead Larkin got the keys. But for some reason or other, he had to use his bayonet. And he used his bayonet to force open something. I think it was a lock on a door. And the tip of the bayonet broke off and stayed in the door. So when he was caught, when they were paraded the following morning, he was on guard, actually, he was on the guard. When they were paraded the following morning, the officer called them to fix bayonets. They put on their bayonets, and to the guy with the broken bayonet, that was the culprit, and that was Mead Larkin.
That's how they caught him.
So he was sent to England, and he was court-martialed, and he spent time in jail. And then he came back to Ireland, and De Valera gave him a portion of land, which is now Boyle Golf Club.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, the house is where, I believe, is where the Fort T is now, or the Fort Green.
Okay.
That's where Mead Larkin's house was originally, yeah. Now, it wasn't great land, you wouldn't live off it, like it was all daub and waterlogged in the winter. So he eventually went back to England and worked in a factory in England, and all his family are, I think they're all still over there, yeah. Yeah.
And why did he let Malloy go?
He was married to an Irish girl, and he had a certain sympathy for them, you know, and he knew that they were going to be killed. But when Malloy got out the back window of the barracks and climbed down the rope into the river, crossed the river into what we now call the pleasure grounds, right? And went over and came up at Marion Road, the bottom of Marion Road there. The driver of the car was Bernard Maguire's uncle.
No.
You remember Dr. Bernard Maguire?
Yeah, of course.
His uncle was, well, Bernard claimed it was his uncle was the man that drove him on up towards Ballynameen, and he went across then into Balladreen,
yeah.
They had a few safe houses up that way, yeah. It is fascinating, yeah.
Now, you mentioned there when Maureen O'Sullivan came to town.
Oh, yeah.
Was that 85? I think it was 85.
I'm not exactly sure.
It was around that anyway, I think.
I know.
Actually, it could be even 88.
It had to be after 88, I'll tell you why. Because I was commissioned at the time, and I didn't get commissioned until 1988.
Yeah.
June 1988 we were
Tony Conboy's probably listening to this now going saying, I told you when. So, sorry, Tony. But, so, you remember those days? That was big commotion in the town.
Yeah, I remember that day. I remember having a chat because she remembered the family name, Tiernan. And she would remember of course, Mr. Old Man Conroy, he was in the Connaught Rangers as well. There'd be Pat's and Eddie's great-grandfather, Pat's grandfather, you know. They lived next door to my grandfather out there in Felton. And she remembered him. He was her father's Batman. So, she remembered quite a few names from around the town. Yeah, especially those that were in the military,
Yeah.
So I met her. I had a nice talk with her, and Yeah, she was funny. She actually signed the program for me.
Lovely.
I have a signed copy of
Lovely.
of the program from her that day. But yeah, it was nice to meet her and
I have
a chat with her. You know,
I just have vague memories of that day, but I just remember
I carried the flag that day.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another topic I have here, because I do remember when you were in the Boy Scouts, you were a leader in the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
So again, what made you get involved at that? Was it the ex-military kind of stuff, or was it just, you know?
I think it was Dermot Lahiff actually asked me.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah. And yourself and Jim.
When did you get involved? When was
Jim
that
Clark.
that you got involved?
God, I can't remember now.
90s?
Honestly, yeah, would it have been the 90s? Yeah. Yeah, it would, yeah. The trip to Germany with Jim Camden and the Adventures, I think, was the big
James
one.
told me that about that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was a great...
They were great days as well.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I have one great memory. We were up in the mountains at Brexbachtal, and we'd been camping up on the top. There was a campsite for scouts at the top. The jamboree had been held there a year or 2 years beforehand, and we were coming down, and it was the 4th of August. And we came to this little village, and we decided that we were going to chow up, you know, have a bit of food. The boys were sitting down on the side of the footpath, and this woman came out. The houses or the business, the premises were higher up. And she came running down. No inglese. That's all you could hear from her, you know. And James Camden was trying to tell her that, no, we weren't English, you know. We were Irish and he had his passport out, and Irlande, you know. But anyway, when she grabbed the nettle by the hand and discovered that we were Irish and not English, you know, brought us back up to the I suppose, what would you call it, a beer garden now. They had tables, you know, the wooden tables out the back and that. They put on the food and they fed us. We didn't have to cook. They fed us. And we had a great time. So when we were leaving, I knew I got a sense that there was something just not right, you know. The 4th of August never clicked with me at the time. And when we were leaving the village, we were coming down a road and there was a V in the road coming back up again, you know. And just as we passed the little angle, I looked back and I saw a cross with fresh flowers. And then it dawned on me, it was the anniversary of the start of the First World War, and the cross was a memorial to the German soldiers that had been killed. So we just turned around and we just formed a little guard of honour and gave us and left a few flowers there that we picked up, you know.
Yeah.
And I can remember that they were standing on the top, giving us a clap, you know, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the abiding memory, yeah. And then, of course, meeting the Germans. The Germans had... It was a place called Niederkassel. I don't know if my pronunciation is right or not, but we arrived in the town and they brought us down. They had organised to have us camp by the river, you know, they had tents set up and all. The next thing, the police arrived looking for the licence for the camp. Of course, in Ireland, we don't have that type of thing, you know, but you had to have a licence. But obviously the Scouts had it all organised, you know. We thought it was funny because we were having a bonfire and we were having Irish soup with the padre. He didn't know what Irish soup was, but anyway. But we brought him out a drop of Irish soup to warm his cockles. But on the Sunday, we went to church. And of course, you know, I suppose it was like Ireland years ago during the Tridentine Mass. You hadn't a clue what the priest was saying. We were in Germany. We hadn't a clue what he was saying, you know. Yeah. And he was, I don't want to use the word breveting on, but he was speaking, you know, in his own language pretty fast, you know, to comparison to what we were able to pick up. Too fast for us to pick up anything, actually. And I remember we came out and we were getting ready to move and we thought, no, the priest has to come out. So when the priest came out anyway, he gave one of the lads an envelope with money in it. So we're trying to figure out where, we didn't want to take it, and we were trying to figure out where this money came from, and then somebody came and were able to translate that. During his sermon, he was telling the people in the church that these Irish young lads were from the poorest part of Ireland. And they had spent years collecting their money or something like that to come to visit the troop in Niederkassel.
Right.
You know, so what could you do? You know, just carry on, say nothing, keep going. You know, so yeah, they're two abiding memories I have, and the hike up into the mountains. And it was just before the first Desert Storm, and the British had a base the far side of the mountain, and you could see the A-10 Thundercats, the tank busters, you know, training overhead, to be flying into the base, you know. So yeah, it was a great experience now, and we went up on the up the river to the bridge at Remagen, and had a look at the bridge. They tried to blow it up, but it lasted long enough to let the Brits across. I think it was 4 days or 10 days, something like that, afterwards, before it actually collapsed, you know. But there was a film made about it, the bridge at Remagen.
Oh, is there? Okay,
oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
The two pillars are still in the middle of the water, you know, the two concrete pillars that held up the bridge in the middle.
Yeah.
You know.
Another topic, well, Boyle through the years is kind of something that I like to bring up, because undoubtedly you've seen Boyle change over the years. But one thing you said at the start of our chat was they used to be playing handball back in the day.
That's right.
And Boyle has historically had.
Oh yeah, we were champion, or Ireland champions.
And we don't have any handball alleys.
No, we had the handball alley over Patrick Street.
Yeah.
And again, I reflect on the late Paddy Kennedy. He used to have competitions, doubles and singles. He'd bring the boys down from the school, and he was a very good handballer himself, you know. And he'd bring us down to the ball alley, and we'd be playing. He'd buy, you know, he'd buy the medals himself.
Yeah,
you know. And you got medals for second, third teams, and you know, and I think nearly everybody got a medal.
Isn't it such a shame though that we don't have?
You had the different age groups, like the first class, second class, third class, fourth, fifth, sixth. You know,
he created the kind of competition himself.
Oh, he did, yeah. Oh, yeah.
From the passion of the sport.
For his passion of the sport, yeah.
I think it's such a shame though, then, because
it's gone now. Yeah, Danny is slow. I don't think it's safe to go into it. I haven't been in years.
No, but there was the course at the back of the complex. They're not being used.
No.
Which is a shame.
It's been used by a dance crowd now, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. That's what I was told. And it's a shame, I suppose, because, again, we have such a vibrant history in a sport, and we don't have a court or an alley to play in it. But I suppose, look, it is the way it is.
It is the way it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of... You see, the alley outside in Patrick Street was an open alley, you know.
Oh, beside Malachy's.
Burns, Malachy Burns, yeah. You know, and... It was open, whereas the one inside is it's indoor for starters. But you know, kids going up, you had to have the 50 pence to put it in, and 50 pence to kids.
That's right. For the lights.
Back in the day, it was, you know, it wasn't to be wasted on.
I don't know when the last time I saw young fellas playing handball though. I remember in my day, yes, but not you don't see it.
Yeah, well, that was our sport, one of our sports growing up. You know, up at, as I said, up at the CIE station again, the store doors. There was 3 doors there, but we always played against the one in the middle. You know, or played off the middle door. You know, and it's a pity that it has died away, especially when Boyle had, like, was it Jim Clark was an All-Ireland champion?
That's right.
Yeah. So Bobby Flaherty was big into the handball. I remember the handball draw, you know, the forerunner of what Boyle Celtic are doing now.
Oh, really? There was a handball?
There was a handball draw. I won it twice myself. You know, it was a shilling a week or 2 shillings a week. It was very, very small anyway, you know, but I remember it was or was it a monthly draw? It could be a monthly draw now. I remember I won £32.50, which was a lot of money. Yeah, because I remember,
And even then you have the Tormey brothers in the last, couple of decades who are brilliant. Were they Irish champions?
They were, yeah.
You see? Yeah. I mean, that's crazy to think we have a sport that we were...
we've let die.
Yes.
We have let it die.
And I wonder across the country, it had to be something similar for towns like Boyle. Maybe wouldn't have had as many champions, but I'd say it's just died.
Yeah, but you had... If you went to Monastereden now, if you went out towards Cloonloo and turned off from Monastereden, there was a ball alley over there, Shroof. There's another one in about the far side of French Park. There was a ball alley on the side of the road as well. You'll see them in towns, but they're derelict now. I don't think there's any
stories they could have told.
The balls that were hopped at those walls. Yeah.
Interests and hobbies, Danny. I know you you got a camera, did you an SLR camera recently?
Yeah,
is that a hobby that you're looking to pursue?
I like going out taking photographs, but there's a but to it. There's a big but.
After you take the photos, is it?
No, somebody says, "Will you take a photograph of me?" I can guarantee that photograph won't come out. But if I was just walking up the street and I saw these two coming, I said, I know they take a photograph. That'll come out. But for some reason or other, posed photographs don't work for me.
Right. It's a different. I suppose it's like anything. It's a different. It's a different, not skill set, but there's different techniques, and it's all about light as well. And taking photos indoors is very different than outdoors.
The cameras have become more expensive, but the development or the printing, I should say, of your photograph now is a lot cheaper than the development of your
of course, back in the day when it was film.
When it was film, So.
And so is it something that you'd like to get into more?
Oh, yeah. I don't go anywhere without, I never go on holidays without the camera or go away for a weekend. If I'm going away, I'll stick the camera in the boot of the car, because you'll always see something, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely hobby, but
it is, because it can get
I was involved in it with a group there during the decade of centenaries. Ollie Breen from Enniskillen and Pat Clark from Dublin. Pat and Ollie and myself, we'd go off to the different events, and from the different angles, we'd each take a position, and we'd just take photographs. Just click, 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 click. Don't wait for pose or anyone to make. Pat would do the posed ones if there was any to be done, but I think we took 1,000. We'd have to go for 30,000. And then when the decade of centenaries came to an end, and we kind of said, look, we're not going to carry on anymore. The 100th anniversary of the war, First World War, is over, and everything is gone. We give it up. The Department of Defence came to us, and I don't know how they found out that we were going to destroy all the photographs, get rid of them. They took what we had. Of course, we had to edit some of them because there might be repeats, but they took I think over 3,000 of our photographs, and they're in the military archives now.
Well, that's great. That's they've been kept.
When the Queen came, and when who else? There was several, like the Enniskillen Memorial, the big one. I got a great photograph in that, and it was actually published. It was, we were standing at the memorial in Enniskillen, and the minister, she's from Monaghan, I can't remember what her name was, but she was standing beside Arlene Foster, the Northern Ireland First Minister. But they had only one. Somebody had forgotten to give the Irish minister the programme, with the hymns and the run of play in it, And she was reading. Arlene Foster had the book between the two of them. They were sharing the book, And I just spotted it at the right, at that particular second, and I got a snap, and I captioned "Ministers reading out of the one hymn sheet."
That's stuck. Yeah. And it's photos like that do stick, like when there's a bit of context to it.
Yeah. So we went on holidays in June. We went to the grandkids went to Disney World in Paris. And I took thousands of photographs of them. That everything. There's only one photograph that sticks out, and that's my youngest grandson. Lifted. Here he is behind this. Actually, he's just come in. He was pulling the sword Excalibur out of the rock. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody around. There was no crowds around it or anything. Just Alfie pulling it up, and the sunlight. Everything was perfect. I said earlier, I don't take a posed photograph. It wasn't a posed photograph. I just happened to see him up at this, and I just went, got it. So. Perfect.
Well, I think that covers everything, Danny, that I wanted to get. Is there anything else that you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Nothing that comes to mind. But what I will say is I enjoyed every minute of my life in the FCA, my life as an officer of the reserves. I worked in Aircom for 28 years. I had a great time in that as well. You know, I worked with a lot of sound, working people, characters. I started off my career in P&T in 71 here in Boyle, and then I got transferred to Sligo. And then when the split came, I was in transport in Sligo at the time with Post and Telegrass, but Post and Telegrass went with Aircom. So I went with Aircom, and then I got clerical officer in Dublin, went to Dublin for a year and came back. But I met some characters, and we had some funny things happen. And I'll tell you a quick one, you know, the way people can interpret the wrong message or be given the wrong message and pick it up. It was Christmas, and I worked 13 Christmases in a row, night duty. And you finished up on Christmas morning at whatever it was, 5 or 6. I'd be just coming home, the kids would be getting up. But anyway, it was Christmas, and the parcel section of the Post and Telegrass would go to the town hall in Sligo because it was big, you know, you needed more room. And the letters then would be in the main sorting office in the GPO there at the bottom of O'Connell Street. So parcels that were going, we'll say for local delivery, we'll say the likes of Drumcliff, Tullahan, Manor Hamilton, Drumahare, Glencarre, you know, around that would be sent down in the evening to the letter office. So as we'd put them into the bags and get them tied up and get them ready for off at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. But this poor old gentleman, we had a big woven basket, for want of a better word. I suppose it was, there was 2 wheels in the middle, and then there was one single wheel at front and back for balance, you know. And it held a good bit of stuff now. But anyway, the parcels had come down, and Noel Burns was in the parcel office, and Noel said to one of the chaps, he said, "Oh God, here, this didn't go. Will you bring down that and deliver it?" And the man picked it up and looked at it, and it was for the Drumcliff delivery. So anyway, he was gone. He was gone for an hour, about an hour and a half, and Noel rang down and he said, "Danny, there's such a man there." And I said, "No. Did you bring down anything for Drumcliff?" I said, No, I said, "There's none. Whatever came down earlier now was here. There was nothing else came down." "Right." He said, "I wonder where the name of hell is he?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Look, we'll send out a signal and see what happens." And just at that, one of the postmen was coming back in. He was after collecting the mail up from Tullahan down to Sligo, down to Drumcliff, when this last stop. He said, "Lads, what the name of hell is going on?" He said, "I'm after meeting," not naming the person, he's halfway between here and Drumcliff with the big wicker basket. So I rang Noel. I said, "He's gone out to Drumcliff with the wicker basket." I told him go down to the sorting office with the person, not to go to Drumcliff with it. But you had funny things like that, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, the boys, the crowd that used to come in at Christmas, there was a gang of themselves, you know. Most of them were from the docks, really, you know. The docks were gone at that stage, but most of them had worked on the docks. On the slagging they used to give the poor old fella about it, you know, it was cruel, but funny little incidents like that happened, you know, and I'll treasure them.
Yeah.
I'll treasure them, yeah. I actually slept in a kayak for 24 hours for people in need one time.
Right.
Yeah, you know, they were a great crowd to work with.
Yeah.
You know, and they were all down to earth, you know. They always had your back and you had their back, and, you know, they were great. Sadly, now there's quite a few of them gone. You know, died very young. Some of them died very, very young.
Yeah.
You know, 2 of my best lady friends, if I can use that, passed. I don't think they reached 50, you know. It makes it sad. So young, yeah. But I have treasured memories of them, and I had a good life. I still have a good life. I had a great working life, you know. I'm still working, you know.
Exactly. It's, you know, got to keep agile and keep moving.
Keep going, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Danny,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And again, thanks for the mini history lesson.
You're welcome, Carlos, anytime. And thanks for coming out and letting me rev it on.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Danny.